Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everybody who's watching. Hi, my name is Vivian Acquah. I'm a certified inclusion strategist, and I have been excited. I'm eager, excited by having this conversation with Minda Harts. She was one of my, not say my first guest, but the guest that I was so eager to interview in 2020, and now a few weeks further. She has written an amazing book, Talk to Me Nice. And let me do a proper introduction of Minda because she deserves it, right? So let me read it. Today's conversation is about how trust fuels high performance. And Minda Harts is a best-selling author. She's a workplace consultant, but also a sought-out-after keynote speaker who's revolutionizing how organizations and people can build trust. So through her groundbreaking 7 trust languages framework, she helps leaders and their teams to create cultures where trust becomes the greatest competitive asset. And like I said, trust is literally fueling high performance. Welcome, Minda, to Let's Humanize the Workplace.
Vivian, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for always amplifying my voice and supporting me. I appreciate you more than words can say. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Minda. Thank you, Minda. I know that I've asked this question before in our first conversation, but I think that by now, maybe your definition has changed. So, what is your definition when it comes to humanizing the workplace?
Oh yeah, it has changed, but I love this question because it puts trust back at the center.
Mm-hmm.
Humanizing the workplace is realizing that each of us brings a lived experience inside the workplace, and that we may work at the same place, but we don't experience the workplace the same. So
Mm.
seeing people as human first and employee or colleague second is humanizing the workforce, because I think sometimes we forget that we're all human beings, right? That have experiences and dreams and goals and aspirations, and sometimes we don't treat each other with that human lens. We're not robots yet, Vivian, right? So we still have that that aspect.
No, we're not becoming any robots. And I just want to highlight because you mentioned something, you mentioned a few things that I want to highlight. Like, we don't all share the same experience, but yet people assume that we share the same experience, right? So, and also that you shared, like, we're not robots. Apparently, somewhere in this whole AI domination, people assume that when you put a prompt in myself or in you, that they can automize us. That doesn't happen that way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we talk to each other like we have no feelings, no,
Mm.
how do
Yeah.
you expect me to respond when, I've been overlooked for that promotion for the last 5 years, right? I'm not a
Mhm.
robot. I'm going to have a feeling, right? And I think we do forget that human aspect of the workplace, and that can't be replaced.
Yeah, okay. I see. I don't see always see the names, but I do want to highlight if you want to share a comment or want to ask Minda something, know that this is the time where I'm able to share your comments. So thank you for sharing that. That's good. We may work at the same workplace, but we will not have the same experience. So thank you for reiterating that. And I want to come back to the following because throughout your books, every book, you have a reference to music, right? So the first, the title that caught the attention the most is "What's Trust Got to Do with It," which is a reference to, I think, and I assume, Tina Turner with "What's Love Got to Do with It," right? And what's your favorite song that energizes you while working?
I love music, and if anybody's read any of my books or knows that fuels
Mhm.
me as I'm writing. But I would say that right now, you wouldn't be surprised by this, Vivian, but Beyonce and Kendrick
Mm.
Lamar, "Freedom," because I
Yeah.
think it's just important for us to remind ourselves what we're capable of, what's still on the horizon, and
Mm.
a winner never quits on himself, and so
Mm.
it reminds me of that, and that just is keeping me energized these days.
Okay, and who else would you add on that playlist?
Fun fact, I recently saw Bruno Mars in Las Vegas, and
Mhm.
I don't talk about it as often, but I love Bruno, and his catalog is makes you want to dance, right? Uptown Funk, all the different things. And
Yeah.
I just think right now we need to be reminded of the joy in the midst of what may feel chaotic at times.
Definitely, definitely. So, talk to me nice. I mean, the title in itself, it brings up like, okay, we need some respect and also the way of talking, right? And also understand that different cultures have a different way of communicating with each other. Where in the Western, people might be a little bit more direct, or maybe they're a little bit subtle in the way of sharing their edginess. And I'm curious into who or what inspired you to develop the concept of this book, which is the 7 Workplace Trust Languages, and also how did your personal experience influence this framework?
Yeah, I love this because so for those who may not know my work, I wrote 3 books centered around the experiences of women of color in the workplace,
Mm,
and
definitely.
and this last book, the most recent book, Talk to Me Nice, I wanted to expand the conversation.
Okay, hold up, hold up. Because you're not doing justice to your book. So, the memo, which you see behind her, right? Then there is Right Within, which is also the yellow book behind her, and Talk to Me Nice. And you also wrote a children's book, right? Which is a version of
Of the
Right Within
memo.
or the memo. Yeah.
It's a version of the memo.
So,
You are more than magic.
I just wanted to share that because you're not doing yourself justice. So let me bring some
Oh,
justice to the table.
I appreciate that. So, I wrote these revolutionary books about healing and what it's like to have a lived experience as a woman of color in a workplace, and opened up the door for a lot of other conversations to be had. And because I spent 15 years in corporate America before I became a workplace consultant and author. And what I realized, Vivian, over the course of these years of writing and speaking at different companies, I would have people come to me, not just women of color, everybody, and
Mm,
say, I don't trust my colleague, or I don't
yeah.
trust HR, or I don't trust my manager. And we've all felt that. And I was like, you know what? At the core of everything that I've been writing about, I never really said it, but it is about trust, the
Mm,
erosions of trust,
yeah.
building trust, right? And I realized that trust is a global language. People in the Netherlands want trust. People in the
Mhm.
Brazil want trust. People in the United States want trust. People in Australia want trust. We may not know what it feels like to be me as a woman in the workplace, but we all know when trust is present, and we all know when
Mhm.
it's not. And that's something
Yeah.
we can all have a fundamental understanding of. And I thought, you know what? We need back to the basics. And the basics is trust. We can't get to solve any of these other workplace issues if we don't trust each other. And so I wanted to be able to, if you say go back to the future, right, and say, hey, okay, let's start here and talk about these
Mhm.
ways that we could do better. And so
Mhm.
that's where trust languages started. Oops, my
Oh,
camera is having a moment.
no worries.
I, it does. Sorry about that.
No
So yeah,
worries.
but yeah, trust is just one of those things that I felt like we had to usher back into the room because it's hanging on by a thread.
Definitely, and also with everything that's happening in the world right now, it's not only the workplace, but it's also outside influences, right, that are impacting trust in the workplace as well. And I wanna reiterate because you mentioned the deficit of trust or the erosion of trust. That trust is being erased and not being replaced. And in the Netherlands, we have a say, and I think that I wrote a post about this. I'm going to literally translate the Dutch phrase like, trust is coming by foot, but can run away like a horse. So it's harder to gain trust, but it's much easier to lose trust.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about how should employees, coworkers, colleagues approach conversations when it comes to having those conversations with their managers, especially if they feel like their needs are not being met?
Yeah, well, going back to the reason why I wrote Talk to Me Nice is I realized that when people were saying that they didn't trust their manager, let's say, I thought to myself, is it that you don't actually trust your manager? I mean, it could be that, but is there an expectation that they're not aware of, right?
Yeah,
And that expectation that they may or may not be aware of is eroding your trust. So what would it look like if they knew what you needed to do your best work, right? Because
exactly.
nobody's
Exactly.
going around the workplace with a crystal ball saying, what does Vivian need from me today? We have to be the one to advocate if something is missing, right? And you can't just go to your manager and say, I don't trust you anymore. You don't care about my work life, right? You're not going to get the best out of that. And
Yeah.
as many of our elders used to say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I thought, well, what if we could close the communication gap? It's really a communication crisis, right? And how do we usher trust back in? And so I think that's the part of managing up, right? Letting people know what you need to do your best work. Because if you're my manager, Vivian, and you know that I need more feedback, if you knew that, then you would more than likely, right? Because you care about this workplace relationship, you are going to provide me that now that you know that that's what I need. And I think that there's all these misconceptions happening in the workplace, misunderstandings, and we don't have space to talk about them. And so that's why I want to give language to letting people know what you need so that they can show up for you and show you what trust could look like if they knew, right?
I don't know how to behave because I'm supposed to be the host. But in the meantime, you're dropping so many gems that it's hard for me to catch up to with all the things that you're sharing. So I'm starting with sharing a quote by Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never ever forget how you made them feel. And that is so connected to what you are sharing when it comes to me with trust, and also knowing how people feel or how you made them feel is often being shared in the undercurrent, but oftentimes we don't do a deep dive in the undercurrent, don't have that conversation about the undercurrent, that things simmer and things are marinating and things are becoming, instead of a mosquito, it's becoming an elephant, because of we are not having a conversation about what is my trust language, what do I find important, and what is your trust language, and how can we communicate like that, right? There are so many comments here, so I have to honor all the comments. So Annette is cheering on. Minda loves her lyrics, definitely do. Thank you, Annette. And a winner never quits on themselves. Thank you. And also Mary Jane, trust is the glue. Definitely is. Elizabeth is sharing that applies to all relationships. No one is a mind reader. That's a good one. Thank you, Elizabeth. And also Mary Jane is sharing, in other words, leader need to be transparent where their needs are. And this comes to one of your trust languages, right, Minda?
Transparency. One of them is transparency. I think the audience is getting the vibes, right?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to your 7 trust languages, right, I made a post about it yesterday, but can you reiterate what the transparency language is? What the trust language is. I know transparency is one of them. The other one is feedback.
Mm-hmm.
What are the rest?
So the rest are, so transparency is that clarity and honesty, right? Security is the intellectual, psychological, and physical well-being in the workplace, that psychological safety, if you will. Demonstration is doing what you say, the behavior around it. Feedback is meaningful and consistent insight. Acknowledgement is people being seen for their work and acknowledged for that. Sensitivity is being mindful of our impact and our behaviors, and follow through is keeping our word. So that's just like the quick sample version of what those trust languages are. And people are going to think about maybe what their primary, secondary, or tertiary is. But to your point, Vivian, we also have to identify what other people's language are, because trust is a two-way street.
Exactly. And whilst you think we have to, or you have to earn my trust, or you have to do this, and then you get trust, but trust is a two-way street. Because the first time that I reached out to Minda, I was just like, I don't know, she doesn't know me, but I'm just going to shoot my shot and see if she will respond to me. And ever since then, we have a connectivity, we have a connection. I make sure that every year I invest in the conversation that I have in Minda because I learn a lot from her besides that, but also gaining trust is also about giving and receiving in a way that it doesn't feel like it's monetary or it's mandatory, right? So trust should feel natural.
I mean, you nailed it. And what people may or may not know is, so we've been, online friends for a few years, but
Mhm.
when I came to London, you
Oh yeah,
came and
oh yeah,
attended an
oh
event there. I mean, you came from the Netherlands to see me, and that I'm like, I trusted you before, Vivian, but you demonstrated the trust language of demonstration, that action.
yeah,
Trust is
yeah,
both a noun and a verb, and you've consistently shown me that, and you can
yeah,
trust again. And so, for those people who've been burned or they think they can't trust, you know, it it really is important for us to trust again when it's appropriate,
yeah.
because you may miss out on really fruitful relationships inside and outside the workplace. And when we block that because we've been hurt in the past and we don't allow ourselves that space to heal or have the conversations that need to, we miss out, right? Nobody else misses out. So trust is a choice, and it's something that I believe in humanity and in the goodness of most people. And so I appreciate how you consistently demonstrate that you are trustworthy, right?
Yeah,
That means
thank
a
you.
lot.
Thank you. But the moment that you said like I'm coming over, you already made the way, like say I'm near a little bit nearby. It's not the Netherlands, but it's in the UK. And I was just like, this is a one-time opportunity. So I had to. I had to invest. And I'm glad that I did because it amplified my connection to you, but also it amplified my admiration for you and the work that you're doing. It's not only healing for my soul now, but it's also healing, the smaller Vivian or healing so many more people. So after that, I know that there are so many people watching this conversation and you never know who you may inspire. And I want to reflect upon what you shared right now because while you were sharing, I think throughout the book, or maybe I shared this with you, there is a section that reminds me of Erica Badu's song, Bag Lady. And you reminded me of that again. Like we are bringing our hurt and old baggage into a new situationship or a new workship where it's eroding trust whilst the trust relationship hasn't even started.
I mean, let that just everybody let that sink in, because if you've
Mhm.
been in a toxic environment and your manager or colleague has eroded trust with you, you go to another environment and you take that baggage with you. Now it's
Exactly.
understanding, we're going to be discerning, right? You're going to,
Yep.
pay attention to the signs and the flags and all the things. But if we communicate and we engage from a place of mistrust, then we don't
Mm,
get a chance to open up what could be an opportunity for us to heal. That manager might be just what you needed to remind you that you can trust again, right? That someone does care about you, that people can follow through, right? That people can give you the positive feedback. And so I think that all of us, back to the human piece, Vivian, people, we all want to be looked at as trustworthy, right? But
exactly.
it takes work, and we have to, give people the benefit of the doubt, but we also have to create that
Mhm.
space so that people can demonstrate what trust looks like. And when they fall short, Talk to Me Nice gives you the language to be able to have that conversation where it doesn't strip anyone of their humanity or their dignity.
Mm. Yes, definitely it doesn't. And also with so many comments here, I have to highlight those comments again. So Mary Jane said they will also never forget what you have done. And that's why just listen to Erica Badu's song Bag Lady and let the words sink in because it's okay to have your bags. It's okay to have a history, but don't let your past block you. Let that be a valuable lesson and see it as a valuable lesson to trust again. And nobody shows up in the workplace with, I want to hurt or impact or make everybody's life miserable. I mean, there are some people out there, but not the majority. The majority doesn't wake up and start their day with, I want to demonize or want to make your day worse. Sometimes it may feel like that, but the majority doesn't show up in the workplace like that as well. Yes. I also can see Monique Wright, and Monique is sharing. Can you talk a little bit more about the top languages? And maybe Monique, if you can demystify which of the 7 languages do you want Minda to demystify? Then I will bring up the question later. Marie is sharing important topic. Thank you, Marie. And Elizabeth is sharing. I say learn the lessons and heal. Definitely heal and turn them into healthy boundaries expectation for the next place, and also see that as the universe might be telling you something. If you keep seeing the same patterns over and over again, there might be a valuable lesson there for you to learn and set yourself up for success in the future as well. So what are practical steps that managers can take to incorporate transparency in their leadership style?
Yeah, I love this because I think transparency is so important. So when I'd be having these conversations with people and they'd say, I don't trust my manager, or I don't trust, maybe a manager would say, I don't trust my direct reports because their camera's off or whatever the reasons are, right? And
that's a good one. That's a good one because people forget the Zoom fatigue. They forget that there might be a reason why there's somebody running behind you, or maybe your background is a little bit messy that you don't want to show up with your camera, right? So many reasons. So continue.
So many reasons. So there's all these reasons that we make up the narrative, right? Well, Vivian must be in San Francisco hanging out because her camera's off, right? Whereas we don't take things into consideration that, well, maybe the alarm went off in her building, right? Maybe she's caretaking and her mother walked behind her and we need to grab her because she has dementia, right? We don't know the reasons, right? But we just go automatically to the worst case scenario with people. Or a manager, they didn't acknowledge you for your project that you just finished. So now you feel like, oh, I'm going to be fired next week, right? We create the narrative that may or may not be true. And that just fuels fire to this emotion of trust. And what we have to do is, again, have conversations so that we don't have to fill in the blanks, right? Because if I fill in the blanks, it's probably going to be worse than anything that's really going on. Instead of saying, you know what, Vivian normally has her camera on. Let me find out if everything's okay. Does she need anything? And find out what's going on before I just assume the worst, right? Or so again, it's this expectation gap. And with managers, one quick thing that you can ask your direct staff is, what do you need from me to do your best work while you're on this team? Simple, but impactful. That's going to bring trust back into the room. And I guarantee you, they may not know what a trust language is, but they're going to tell you 1 or 2 or 3 of those 7 things. And they're going to appreciate you opening up the space for transparency, that clarity, and that honesty. And the same is true for us as individuals. If we work with our colleagues, asking them, hey, I want to make sure we have the most harmonious relationship possible. What could we do to enhance this relationship even better? They're going to tell you 1 or few of those things, right? And now that we have a baseline for what good looks like, this trust begets trust. And I'm optimistic that if we have better conversations with each other, then we can stop eroding trust that we didn't even know was eroding, right?
You just went on and on and on. And I just wanted to say something for the people in the back, because you mentioned something that may seem natural to us as having a conversation with your peer, having a conversation with your manager, or having a conversation with whoever the stakeholder is. But also understand that there are people out there that feel challenged into just having a conversation because it might lead to a conflict, or it might lead to activating some kind of thing that makes it feel a little bit conflicty or a little bit challenging to have that conversation. And I just want to put it out there. If for any chance you don't want to have that conversation, but you want to empower your team, you want to empower your organization, know that there are two amazing women on this call who can support you with that. Think about a facilitator. Think about bringing Minda in. And I hope to bring Minda in Europe so that I can connect with her again. So if there's somebody watching in Europe, please bring her in. Please bring her in.
I mean, to your point, Vivian, it's important that we have better conversations.
Exactly.
There is no future of work without trust. Period.
Yeah. Okay, I see a few questions in the call, and Mary Jane is asking, this is something that is an aha moment for me based on something shared in a training today. So what has happened to you in the past that created the distrust you are now demonstrating? What do you have to say about this, Minda?
I mean, this is basically, thank you, Mary Jane, for sharing. This is exactly what we were talking about earlier, right? Is there have been moments. Listen, we've all experienced low trust environments. We've done some trust breaking, not intentionally, but unintentionally. So we all know what it feels like when trust is broken, and probably to break someone's trust. But just as we want someone to trust us again through acts of demonstration and showing up, we also have to evaluate and assess where are those spaces that, to your point, Vivian, I can learn from. This is an opportunity for growth, but I can't keep distrusting everyone, or I'm not going to do my best work. One stat I want to throw out there is trust isn't just a feel-good mechanism. Trust is also good for the bottom line. When trust is present, we're 21% more productive. So if I'm focusing on I can't trust anybody, everybody's out to get me, I'm not going to be my most productive, right? So it's important for us to heal from that and give people a new opportunity to show us, now that they're aware of where, essentially we're talking about boundaries, people. What does boundaries show up like in the workplace? And if people know what trust looks like to you, then they can show up for you. But again, people are going to keep doing what they're doing if they don't understand what your baseline is. And so trust is good for you too, right? So it's not just good for them. So think about, if you've been avoiding conversations, we don't have to look at them as, this is going to create a larger problem. This could take away some of that ambiguity that you've been experiencing and create more clarity and honesty in the relationship.
Yeah, and also look into what is your reason for not having that conversation, because it's important to look into, is there something that you're creating unconsciously, like fear or something else that is hindering you from having that conversation? So Monique has come up and she said, to clarify, you talked about folks having top trust languages. How is that determined?
Great question. Thank you, Monique. So one thing I would encourage is get the book, because there's assessments. There's assessments and scripts. So if you don't have the language, it's in there. But what I will say is this: we tend to have a top trust language, and that's individual, right? For me, acknowledgement is my primary trust language. I like to be acknowledged for a job well done, right? I like to be giving my kudos specific, right? Due to the research that you did in Q3, Minda, it's really helped us reach our new targets. Thank you for that, right? That fills my trust cup up, right? That puts trust chips in the bank account, right? That I can hold on to. And so for you, that may be something that's important to you, but you're working with someone or working for someone that never acknowledges your work. You could hit all the sales goals and no one ever says anything to you, and you don't trust your environment because you aren't getting acknowledgement. So part of advocating for ourselves is, how do we advocate for the things we need so that we can continue to do our best work? But if people think you're a self-starter, an independent worker, and I don't need to tell Minda anything because she's going to get the job done, they don't realize that, okay, two things can be true. I am a self-starter, but I also like to be acknowledged for the work that I am bringing, the contributions that I am making. And I think acknowledgement is so important, especially for certain groups in the workplace that have historically not been acknowledged for their efforts, right? And so I think it's really important for us to do that right now. Each and every one of us, I don't know anybody, Vivian, that doesn't want to be praised in some degree, right? It may not be your primary language, but right now we could Slack somebody, we can DM someone, we could text, we can email and say, hey, I just want to acknowledge what you said in the last all staff meeting. Thank you for sharing your insights, right? That's going to sit well with me. And I'm going to be like, wow, they do value me. They do see me. And in this environment where bonuses may not be an option, acknowledgement is free.
Exactly. This is beyond church. This is a summit. This is a week summit of golden nuggets that you have shared. And also, it's very easy to critique. It's very easy to share direct feedback that isn't appreciated, or it's very easy to dismiss, right? But if you're not the woman or the man or the person in the arena and you're receiving that, but you're not receiving the compliments, you don't have that balance to compensate, right? You talked about the compliments, you talk about acknowledgement and adding that into the bank so that for those times that when things are challenging, that you can withdraw from that particular bank. So I like that. You also have a thing to say about HR. And what advice do you have for HR professionals to rebuild trust in an organization? I do want to add a disclaimer because HR, it stands for human resources, but know that HR is there to support the company with their policies. At the end of the day, HR is there to support the company with their policies. Bring it in, Minda.
I appreciate that disclaimer, and that is a fact. But I also think that we do say that HR is the nucleus of the company, right? So if that is a space where people are supposed to go to get resources, then that needs to be a trusted place that people can depend on. And to your point, I don't think HR says, how can I erode trust with the employees today? I know that nobody starts the day out that way, but there are certain decisions that are made. There's certain policies that are impacting people. And we have to ask ourselves, are we enhancing trust with our employees or are we eroding trust with our employees? And what can we do to reset that? And I think there has to be a rebranding within HR because historically it has been a place where people are mistrusting, right? Or there's low trust due to a lot of things. And I know that in the book, I say that there's this hit song that everybody in the workplace loves to play is My Hands Are Tied, right? And we need to untie these hands and figure out how we provide people with the resources and the trust they need. And part of that goes back to transparency as a trust language. Have clarity with people. Don't have ambiguity, right? If you are making decisions, then be clear on what you know and what you don't know, right? But I think there needs to be a place, and if HR isn't going to be that place for people, then we need to start to think about what that looks like in the future. But I do believe that we need HR as a function, and we need them as a collaborative partner, and trust is that collaborative partner, right? And so we need to be able to think about what that looks like. And I'm hopeful that all our HR partners will read Talk to Me Nice and start to incorporate these 7 trust languages, because our workplace cannot survive without having trusted partners like the HR department.
I just want to bring on regarding the trust aspect, right? And also what you are saying, like HR should have your book or should have the principles of Talk to Me Nice, but also understand that we can create our own definition. What does trust look like? And make sure that people understand what your version of the trust is as well. And when it comes to what you shared right now regarding HR, it reminds me of Stripe and how Stripe handled their layoffs. They know they effed up, and excuse my language, but the director or the CEO shared during a layover that they could have done better. And the way that they humanized the layoffs by setting people up for success, extending their visa, but also extending their stay, make sure that they can use e-learning so that they can level up their skills. They can also reach out to managers for recommendations as well. And what I've seen just the past few months, I'm not going to name names because I don't feel like it needs to be deserved, but I've seen layoffs being handled dehumanizing way, and you never know if people will come back. You never know, because for me, the way that Stripe handled, and I know that Facebook copied the same ritual during the pandemic. They haven't done so, with the last thing, but I want you to look up Stripe with the layoffs during the corona, what the CEO did, because that should be the script for future layoffs. I understand that layoffs are sometimes mandatory, but there is a way of humanizing the layoffs and respecting that behind that figure or behind that name, there is a person who's carrying a community. There is a person who might be a caregiver. There is a person who may be a parent and taking care of their kids, right? So I just want to bring that on. Okay, going to the next question. Is there a question you feel like I haven't asked you?
You've asked really great questions, but I want to lean into something because I think it's so important. You briefly hit on it, and I want to just dive in a little deeper, is feedback. So feedback is one of the 7 trust languages. And I used to have a manager that I'd get so annoyed with because he never provided me feedback. But part of it was me having like a come to Jesus moment with myself to say, well, he doesn't know that you need feedback, Minda. So you don't trust him because he doesn't give you feedback on your projects. But what would it look like to have a conversation with him, right? And that conversation looks something like, I really, really value our collaborative moments. It really helps me when you provide feedback on my project so that I know that there's some ways for me to improve or I'm hitting the mark. Do you think that on my next project, we can have set aside some time on the calendar to talk about what went well and what we can improve upon? Because I really value that feedback from you. When I finally allowed myself to have that conversation, Vivian, it opened up a whole new world for us because he didn't know that I needed. He was the type of guy like, no news is good news, right? And exactly. Here I am creating this situation in my mind about why he doesn't give me feedback. And feedback can sometimes feel like a criticism. It can feel like micromanagement. We've all gotten gifts that we don't like, right? So feedback could be the gift that you don't want. But this is where trust is important with feedback. Are we giving feedback as an opportunity to enhance trust or erode trust? And I think that's key, right? Am I giving you this feedback as a way for you to grow in your role or to demonize you or diminish you or make you go through a loop in your mind for the rest of the day? And also on top of that, am I providing a loop where I provide you with what I want to give you feedback on, and I allow for you time to process what I've said to you so that we can have a dialogue about it? Because oftentimes in the workplace, feedback is one-sided, right? And I think it's important for us, again, when we're having conversations in the workplace, we can give feedback even with tough conversations and still keep trust as the catalyst. And on the flip side of it, if I am giving you feedback, Vivian, how are you responding to me? Is the response enhancing trust or is it going to erode trust, right? And so we've all been in a conversation with people where someone will be like, I don't agree with that. Nobody's ever told me that, all those kind of back and forth. And it's like, wait a second, let's have a conversation where we have a loop, where trust is still the catalyst and we can respect each other. And I feel like, again, what we're asking for is respect in the workplace. We're saying, let's have these conversations, but we can still disagree and still have trust and see each other in a trustworthy way when it's all said and done.
Exactly. And I know that there are workplaces out there everywhere. I'm not only pointing my fingers at the US. I see this as an international aspect where we can work on trust. And some companies have moved in a way ever since the election of last year. Some companies have moved in a way where it's about eroding trust or amplifying trust, right? And all these elements, it can kill trust or it can fuel trust and it can fuel high performance. And know that trust it seems very secretive, but it's such an important foundation. I would say one of the important pillars for boosting high performance in the workplace. Am I wrong, Minda?
You are 1,000% right, because again, when trust is present, the companies experience 50% more retention and 74% less burnout. And so again, trust isn't just good to have, it's good for the bottom line. And it's important that we offer that in, because you want your employees to do their best work. You can't do your best work if you're stressed and anxious and not certain about what's happening minute to minute, right? Or having to, send you emails about what value I bring. Like, that's not going to help invest in trust. And again, maybe the company is having an issue with trust as a whole, but we can have those micro moments, right?
Yeah.
You get to control how we engage on the team. And that's something that I think is so important, because that's going to enhance the employee journey from start to finish.
I love this. And also, Mary Jane is sharing what you shared right now regarding your definition. It sounds like feed forward to me. And Mary Jane, you said the words, because I was about to say, like, it's not feedback, it's feed forward, right? Where you build somebody up instead of breaking them down. So thank you, Mary Jane. And Mary Jane is also sharing trust is a core human need. Yes, it is. It is. So I've almost reached for the last question. Unless somebody else pops up a question, now is the time that you can share your question. But I want to bring up the following, because it's almost the end of 2025. We are reaching to 2026. And I'm curious into what is your main wish for 2030 when it comes to humanizing the workplace and the 7 workplace trust languages?
Wow. 2030. When you said it sounded like a long ways away, but it's not at all. But my hope is this. Listen, trust, we want it in our romantic relationships. We want trust in our platonic relationships. Why wouldn't we expect that in the workplace with the people that we work with? We'll spend 90,000 hours of our lives in a workplace. And so trust should be top of mind. Each and every moment, we should bring trust in the room, virtual and in a physical room. And what I hope is that with the 5 love languages did with Gary Chapman's framework, the seven trust languages will be a staple in our management training, in our HR training, in our communication and conflict resolution, that it will be a solve for how we show up because again, there's no future of work without trust, and you can't replace that with anything else. That human connection is still necessary, regardless of how we evolve in the workplace. So I hope that we will talk to each other nice, and we'll lean into these 7 trust languages so that we can have better working relationships at the end of the day, Vivian.
And she's dropping the mic as is it's nothing. So I don't have anything else to say. The only thing that I can say is, Minda, it was a pleasure and a joy and such an inspiration. And you make my work hard as a host, because here I am listening to you whilst you're dropping so many gems, but also realizing that trust has been missing and it has been eroding, not since Corona. It was already there, but now it has even amplified, and people are craving for that trust. People are craving for that connection, and having your book as a foundation or as a pillar for so many communication skills, or for leadership development, or for communication development, or for conflict management. I can see so many leanways into connecting your book into what people are providing. So I'm looking forward to future certification and training, but looking forward to it being amplified because it's needed in the workplace. So for those of you who don't know her book, Talk to Me Nice. It's mandatory, not only for leaders, it's mandatory for every employee in the workplace. And it's also mandatory for every entrepreneur. When you engage with other people, you have to learn about how you can talk to other people nice. Thank you, Minda.
Thank you, Vivian.
Until next time, everybody. Bye.